Welcome to today's podcast, One-on-One with Walt Lascos. I'm Walt, and today's message is all about older adults and understanding what matters most to them in their golden years of life. To help us gain a perspective on this, I'm turning to a credit union friend and marketing colleague of almost 20 years, Linda Garbosi. Many of you may remember Linda. She left the credit union industry, went on to get her second master's degree, and now works as a gerontologist with a passion for neuroscience and the aging brain and life stories. She currently holds the position of Aging Innovation Coordinator with Senior Services, Inc. in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Linda, so good to have you with us today.
Oh, Walt, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, Linda, set the stage for us, please. June is World Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and I propose that the more we can understand and respect what matters most to older adults, the better able we'll be at connecting with them and helping them stay safe from financial exploitation. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Understanding, really what matters to older adults or people in general is, the basis for relationships and for building trust, right? And so when we take the time to get to know someone, not necessarily a group of people, but that group as individuals and what is important to them, then we're able to give them the information or share the information, discuss topics that are of interest to them, and move forward from there with everybody kind of, I hate to say the kumbaya thing, but holding hands and learning together.
Mm-hmm. And it's all about building trust and solidifying that relationship.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's one of the things in credit unions, we really strive to build relationships every day. And in many of the credit unions I worked with, our first goal was build a relationship first. Don't worry about selling products and services. That'll come if it makes sense. But build that relationship first and build trust. And, it's the same thing with older adults. Sit down, ask questions, listen, and then respond from there.
Mm-hmm. And help me zero in further on this because, I think to myself that there's so much information today that's available online. I see a lot of organizations, agencies putting a lot of resources online as well when it comes to, financial scams and fraud and how to recognize them, how to stay safe. When it comes to online engagement, is that a way or one of the best ways that we could connect with an older adult?
Well, it's certainly one of the ways, right? And so, one of the things that I saw during the pandemic with older adults, as well as with the rest of us who, were kind of in lockdown, was we turned to the internet even more for information. And to your point, there's so much information out there that it's fantastic because there's more at our fingertips than there ever was before. But it's also a little overwhelming because once you get all this information, how do you kind of cull through it? And how do you focus in on what, number one, is true, what isn't true, and then what really applies to you? So, that's one way to connect, but I guess, then my marketing hat comes out and goes on top of my gerontologist hat, and it says, then what we need to do is find a way to create a path for more information. So is online engagement the best? It might be for one particular person, but it might not be for the next. And a lot of times, especially when you're talking about scams and fraud, that is it's such an emotional, personal thing, right, for each individual, that oftentimes, I'll say people, older adults, kind of any age, want to really sit down and talk with somebody who they trust. They want to hear directly from them. So sometimes online is a great place to just sort of gather some information so that you can kind of figure out what you need. And then you take that information and then connect at an in-person, whether it's a meeting, a panel discussion or a meeting or a one-to-one interaction to kind of narrow down what makes the most sense for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, because the other thing too is, it goes without saying, that if you're an older adult, or I'm an older adult, and if I'm in a
Me too. Well,
right, hey, and if we're in a situation where, oh my God, we were just conned, we just lost thousands of dollars, you know how embarrassing that is. I mean, studies also point out that there are so many older adults that are so embarrassed they never report being scammed or losing all that kind of money. And can you blame them? I mean, it is embarrassing. So I could see how important it is and how delicate and sensitive it is to get into a discussion with someone who has been victimized like that.
gosh, yeah, and your point is spot on. Getting scammed, particularly out of money, is embarrassing for anyone of any age, and it's shameful. There's all these kinds of feelings that come up associated with that. And with an older adult, there's even more feelings associated with that because we already in our society kind of, older adults don't matter as much. They've kind of, lived their life. They're not so useful anymore. It's a stereotypical response. So there's embarrassment that goes along with that. But then how do you deal with that? How do you, make sure it doesn't happen again? How do you recover from that? So yeah, it's a really, really sad and very concerning situation. And I got to tell you, I talk to people very often that, it didn't start out looking like a scam, but, 50, 60, 70, $200,000 later, they're realizing it's a scam.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously too. I mean, we see stories, and I've seen them, and I've seen people who are like highly educated, highly successful in life, and they fall for it. They get conned. This happens. We're human,
Yeah.
and I think we need to realize that we're human. These things kind of happen, but I think that, and Linda, correct me, if I'm being ageist in this or being wrong in how I understand this, but I think to myself of like older folks, older adults, you have parents or grandparents, and they're at an age where, oh my God, if my kids find out that I just lost thousands of dollars, they're going to put me in a home. And that's the last thing a lot of them are fearful of as well, is, being made to go someplace against their will and being sent away, and because they can't be on their own anymore because they might fall to a scam. I could see how troubling and concerning that could be for an older adult that might be in that situation.
Oh, sure, because and for an older adult or anyone in the situation, your whole world has just changed because what you thought you have, you don't have anymore. So whether that's the perceived or real thought of I'm going to have to live somewhere else, whether that's I'm not going to be able to leave a legacy for my family that I've worked my entire life. Yeah, it's completely overwhelming. And, to kind of go back to a point you made a little earlier, is that, highly educated people get caught in scams too. Everybody does. And, we're all moving so fast and there's so many things coming at us. It doesn't matter what your age is. It's in your own world, in our each individual world, we're being faced with way more information than we can possibly handle at any given time. And so anybody can, I use my air quotes of fall for it, but get sucked into it because, again, we're just moving so fast. And if you miss one little detail of an email or something that would have alerted you, you can be going down a whole rabbit hole and not know it until it's much too late.
Mm-hmm. Oh, exactly, exactly. Linda, for those of us who advocate, for the safety of older adults, helping them to recognize these financial scams and fraud and what to do, what would you say would be the top tips that you would recommend that we should always keep in mind when we're communicating with older adults?
Oh, great question. Thank you. Kind of going back to listening. So when you're in conversation, listen for cues of what people are saying. So, it might be in a conversation that you might even overhear, or notice that a bill was paid 2 days late, and that person is known for paying bills, as soon as they arrive. Or, I didn't go to the grocery store this week. I think I'll just skip this week and go next week. And listen for those cues. And then, it might be nothing. It may just be they didn't need to go to the grocery store this week, but it may not. It may be something else going on. So I always say, and it's certainly not my quote, I just love it, and that is, there's a reason why we all have 2 ears and 1 mouth, okay? And so, listen in conversation, be engaged. Don't be moving so fast that you can't slow down, and just be present for the moment, because you may be the one that hears something that can help the person you care about avoid or get out of a situation.
And Linda, before you leave today, what's the best way for listeners to connect with you if they have a question or if they're looking for more information?
Well, Rafa's been trying to give email addresses and telephone numbers out on the podcast. How about if they just connect through Lasco's communication? I think is it .com, through you, and you always know where I am.
There we go. That sounds like that's the best course to take. So anyone that has questions for Linda, it's send an email to or just visit lascoscommunications.com, and you could pose your questions there. Thanks again, Linda, for your insights, and thank you everyone for listening today. Stay safe.
It's been a pleasure, Walt. Thank you.